Okay, so we are sort of moving on with chapter 4. Chapter 4, what system are we talking about? The endocrine system. Starting off fresh. Why in the world are we here? Awesome. And what is today?
Best day.
Awesome. Very good. So as we were talking about things on Tuesday, we talked about the greatness of the anabolic chain. So you all help me remember. What was first?
Testosterone.
Say it with grace and power. What was next? Growth hormone. What was next?
Insulin.
IGF. Very nice. And then? Insulin. Awesome. So whenever we can stay anabolically charged, that's when we're in the process of muscle growth, muscle repair, all of these good things. Remind me real quick, what was the primary catabolic hormone that we were talking about?
Cortisol.
Okay, excellent. So when we start to think about cortisol, we need to remember that this is what we really want. AL or IL?
ISOL.
You switch
The OSI.
It did not look right. I was like, whoa. It's like I was looking at that like, that's not right. So it's so funny. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you've been trying to talk and write at the same time. Sometimes my brain and my motor skills don't connect for just that short moment. So thanks for dealing with me with that. So also one of the cool things that we talked about on Tuesday was the greatness of this thing that I call the Fab Five of ways we should train. What is the Fab Five? When we do this, what are we going to be working out? Large muscle groups. Moderate to high volume. Heavy resistance. Short rest intervals. And 2 years of experience. What's the deal with the 2 years of experience? Little catch.
Yeah.
You don't tell them. Excellent job, Brock. God bless you. What else do we have going on with that? What is it that's interesting about that 2-year window that really lets your body, God bless you, trust you?
That's the neurological pathway connection.
Exactly, because remember we talk about the neurological pathway along with the messengers being sent. One of the things you have to remember is Fab 5 training, when it's done too aggressively, can make you have a catabolic response. So this is the thing. Did we talk in here on Tuesday about the greatness of progressive overload versus aggressive overload? Yes? Very good. So remember, a progressively overloaded designed program is going to keep you anabolically rocking. Whereas if you overly aggressively change that program too fast, too quick, that's when you end up getting overtrained, getting overstressed, where you really tax that nervous system and become catabolic. So those are some things to think of without a doubt. So now, let's talk about, a few things about these primary anabolic hormones. So I'm jumping in on page 74. So on page 74, we really start to talk about testosterone more and more and more and more. We see that testosterone sort of tends to be the first domino in the chain that keeps this anabolic train rocking down the tracks. Okay? And there's some really interesting bullet points that I want to bring to your attention. Okay? And I'm down here, and I guess it's sort of the beginning of that. God bless you. Everybody sneezed this morning. Get it over with. We see down here at the bottom that testosterone has both direct and indirect effects on muscle tissue. So here you're thinking about one hormone that both directly and indirectly affects skeletal muscle tissue. It's one of the only hormones that does that. Now, here's what's scary. Cortisol can both directly and indirectly affect skeletal muscle tissue as well. So do you see this whole thing with either being anabolic or catabolic really being a double-edged sword? And we really have to continue to watch that balance and monitor our athletes and monitor our own programs as we move them together. We see that it promotes growth hormone from the pituitary gland, which can increase protein synthesis and in turn have this synergistic effect on protein synthesis. So this is when we see when a testosterone receptor is all of a sudden open and hungry and ready, it's gonna not only trigger testosterone to be downregulated, but it's also going to send the message to growth hormone. Remind me where growth hormone is released from? Pituitary gland. Excellent, Aisha, you had that rocking. Okay, we need to see down here, keep going, and this is one of the things that Taylor just mentioned that was really interesting. The effects of testosterone on the development of strength and muscle size are also due to the influence of the nervous system. Keep going back to this thought, you guys, of all the body systems that come into play, which one comes in first and which one really is the most sensitive? The nervous system. So whenever you have your nervous system too overly taxed, it really only can go into a catabolic response in an effort to save you from killing yourself. So it's this beautiful thing that the nervous system has to play. Do you remember us talking about this? The testosterone to cortisol ratio? Yes or no? Yes. Which one do we want to be high? We want testosterone high, and what do we want with cortisol? We want it low. So this is this whole thing. Whenever we see these numbers flip, that's a sign that our nervous system has been overtaxed. And remember, the nervous system is like the wiring, and if the wiring is frayed, the message can't be sent. It's almost like when you got bad Wi-Fi connection. The message cannot be sent. So that's one of those important things to remember. Okay? Now listen, jump over with me on to page 75. Just a few things I'm highlighting. Now, here's what we know. I'm down here almost 2/3 of the way down. And this is, I know it's always shocking when I talk about aerobic training to people, because being that I am an aerobic athlete primarily. Okay, here's what we know. High intensity aerobic endurance exercise can cause a dramatic catabolic tissue response. And so an increase in testosterone may be related to the body's need for protein synthesis to keep up with protein loss. Here's what we know. High intensity aerobic activity, primarily running, has a catabolic effect on the body. So what we know is, for my endurance athletes, I have to watch their every move, their every time. I have to watch their mood, because here's what happens. If their training program is dialed in as it should be, they can stay anabolic, and they need to, because they need that testosterone to help with muscle synthesis and muscle rebuild. You guys, if you start to see one of your aerobic athletes, you guys, many times most aerobic athletes are kind of ectomorph by nature anyway, yes or no? Okay, so think about this. If I am not only weighing, but I am measuring body fatness of my aerobic athletes, which you should be doing that with all of your athletes. But if you're measuring that and you're starting to see, number one, if you're seeing weight loss in an aerobic athlete, and then you're seeing body fat percentage go up, you are seeing that that athlete has become crazy catabolic. And the correlation to that is you're probably seeing their mood change. You're probably seeing their performance go down, because they have all of a sudden jacked with this testosterone to cortisol ratio. You guys, it happens so quick with, you guys, aerobic endurance athletes are so much more sensitive to becoming overtrained than anaerobic athletes. And it's so tricky with this testosterone to cortisol ratio. So we have to keep all athletes anabolic, but especially our aerobic athletes, because it's harder to make that happen. Okay, so over in the second column, just some things, and you probably already know this, a little bit of laughter would be fine when you realize what we're gonna talk about. In men, testosterone concentrations are typically highest in the morning and drop throughout the day. They do increase at any point in time with the circadian rhythm with exercise. Now, so when people find out about this, people say, hey, is there a benefit to working out in the morning early when testosterone levels are their highest? Some research studies say yes. Some people say take that maximum window when your testosterone levels are the highest and couple it with Fab5 training. Now, the one thing that I will say is, if you are not an early morning exerciser, don't use that as an excuse. You still can boost those testosterone levels at any time during the day, but they are highest in the early morning hours. Taylor.
So maybe it would be best vice versa, that work it when it's maybe at its lowest. Allow your
Possibly to boost it.
Like before you go to bed, I work out at midnight. I
Yeah.
really do all the time. I work out at midnight before I go to bed
Mhm.
because I can't sleep, and I'll just go work out, and then when I go to sleep, I feel like I recover really well and I get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, we do know that when you do work out, you get that anabolic boost. But what the latest study that I read is there are people that are really trying to capture that anabolic anabolic chain window. They're seeing a little bit of marginal gains and all that. But anytime you can turn on that anabolic chain, turn on that anabolic chain without a doubt. Okay? Another thing to think of is whenever we see, come down here, last sentence on this, you guys, in response to androgen receptors, it's very dynamic with faster upregulation than men. This is this whole thing about women, of course, do we have as much testosterone? No, but guess what happens? Our receptors do a little bit better at capturing whatever testosterone is there and synthesizing it and using it just a little bit better.